What's up, family? I hope this live finds you well. So, we're going to be talking today with a really two amazing women who have done really powerful activism work, and the conversation is really timely. We're going to be speaking about how we can individually use our privileges for progress. Hi, Jess Sims. I'm so glad you're here. Hi. Oh my gosh, so many friends. All right, let me look for. Let's see. Sorry, guys.
Hi.
Hi. Oh my gosh, it's so nice to meet you.
Yes.
I've been obsessing over your IG. So this is like when IG friends meet in real life.
I know. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
My friend Heather told me so much about you. She said you're absolutely incredible. So I said, well, if you think she's incredible, then she's incredible. So I want to talk to her.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here. Will you introduce yourself to folks who are just getting, actually, if you don't mind doing a two-parter, introducing.
Oops. Frozen. Oh no, what's happening? Okay, are we back?
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. Nothing we can't handle, a little
I,
technological snafu.
absolutely. So what am I doing? I'm introducing myself and I didn't hear the second part.
To Prague.
Okay, so my name is Michelle. I'm co-founder of From Privilege to Progress. Our movement started when Melissa and I were the two women that shone light on the injustice of the two Black men in Philadelphia who were arrested for not buying a coffee in Philadelphia back in 2018. So I was the first person to speak up, and Melissa amplified my voice by actually posting that video on Twitter, and went about 48 hours. And we came together and said, while we have the world's attention to what racism actually looks like today, we need to continue that conversation, spread awareness. Melissa and I were complete strangers at the time. I'm white. So we find that oh no, she's frozen. Okay. People of two different races on the stage.
So what I mean, I have to like speak on, give y'all credit, because it wasn't just 13 million changes what at Starbucks, right?
Are you still there? Yeah, it's
Here.
yeah, it's glitching so bad. I'm watching some of the. We'll try to get through this, people. Oh,
Through. Dang. I hope it's not my connection. I have full connection.
yeah, me too. It's been happening to me lately, and I feel like because our message is growing and getting so powerful and bringing people together, like we're fighting against those evil forces that want us to stay divided. It's not gonna happen.
The Wi-Fi gremlins.
Yeah. They're like, nah, 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 nah.
My question, or my point was, can you speak to the impact that had? So 13 million people, your tweet went viral, and then that actually created change at Starbucks with some of their training, right?
It did. Well, they closed out 8,000 stores to do unconscious bias training. But to be 1,000% honest with you, we don't think it was enough. I think that it was like in my gut, and I'm learning to always trust my gut. It felt performative. because we just saw just the other day that Starbucks had made an announcement, an internal memo that was not supposed to have been leaked, that they didn't want their employees wearing anything that had to do with Black Lives Matter. So when they're, you know, they hadn't.
It's just so.
I know. They hadn't really been doing their work. They didn't do their internal work at every single level to address their own biases. They said that they were. They said that they were taking care of things internally. We tried to work with them 2 years ago to come together with us to start some kind of campaign. They turned us down. They ignored us. And 2 years later, what have you guys learned? How, to be honest, how dare you tell employees, especially employees of color, that they can't wear Black Lives Matter anything, but you are in full support of LGBTQ communities, as you should be. Black people make up those communities as well. So yeah, they closed their stores, but I don't think the change was deep.
So speaking of that change, you yourself and Melissa are so amazing at holding space for these conversations, but not just holding space for the conversation, directing people to how they can look in the mirror, recognize their privilege, and use that as a catalyst. So what if somebody's just getting initiated into this conversation? What's your, tell them, what's step one?
Step one is education. That is number one, because see, my parents are from Ghana, so I'm first generation Ghanaian American, and I grew up in a white school district and a white school. We learned zero Black history, and Black history is American history. We've been here since 1619. We were literally brought here to build the economy. That is, we are an integral part of building this nation. Yet we get 1 month that's barely talked about. I was taught about Martin Luther King, Jackie Robinson, and Rosa Parks, as if they were like the only 3 Black people that like ever existed. And so we need to start with educating ourselves. People do not understand systemic racism, systemic oppression. They don't realize that it's in every single one of our systems, whether it's healthcare, housing, education, banking, criminal justice. Anywhere you look, you can find examples of white supremacy. That's just a fact, you know? When enslaved people were free, they didn't change the laws to include us. They didn't say, hey, for the past 250 years, we've been lying to you about these African people. Because when you go to enslave a people, you have to justify it. So you have to devalue them and dehumanize them to justify what is being done. And when they were freed, they didn't correct that. So it just continued and continued. And we can see now that mass incarceration is just a different form of slavery. So we have to start with educating ourselves, because you wouldn't show up to a battle with no weapon and be like, hey guys, I'm here to fight. You wouldn't sign up for a marathon and run without having ever trained a day in your life. You have got to start educating yourselves. You can watch 13th. You can listen to Seen on Radio, Seeing White podcast. You can listen to Code Switch. You can read White Fragility. There's so many resources. And if you're confused on which area to start in, you could just look right where you are. What industry do you work in? And start researching that industry, you know? This fight takes every single one of our voices. So we have to start arming ourselves with education.
Start where you are. That is so not easy, but simple. I mean, it's like start where you stand, where you sit. Yes. And so you advocate the one-on-one conversations that this fight requires. Yeah. Can you illuminate on that?
So the one-on-one conversations are so important, because I don't think people realize how many people have deep racial biases and even racism all around them. I know a girl who realized that her husband was actually racist. She didn't realize it because she never had the conversation with him about race. They never really talked about it. And then, you know, they showed to one of our engagements, and it came to light to her, oh my gosh, my husband has a lot of racist thoughts. Even for me personally, when I started this journey, you know, I unfortunately lost some friendships, and it's because I hadn't been having the conversation on both ends. Hadn't been having the conversation about what my experiences look like, because we can be there are two Americas. You and I can be in the same place together at the exact same time and experience the exact same thing in two completely different ways. I remember one time actually being at the beach, being in Avalon, New Jersey, and it's a very white beach, to be honest with you. Like, I don't know why I kept going there for so many years with my friends, but I remember one time being in a bathroom, and a white woman looking at me. I might be kidding you. She looked at me like she wanted to hurt me. And it was so uncomfortable that I actually couldn't return her gaze, because it was like an angry, I hate you gaze. And I remember my girlfriend being there with me, and she had noticed it. My white friend noticed it. But in that moment, she hadn't said anything. And you know, it's those moments that you have to speak up for us. Because if I would have spoken up in that bathroom, the only Black girl amongst all these white women, how would that have been perceived? That's why allyship is so important. And so you have to have these conversations with the people around you. Find out what's in their minds, what's in their hearts. You tell them that you're on the path towards anti-racism. You invite them to join you, to join me on this path of anti-racism. Because people are finding out really quickly. I had a girlfriend and a guy friend, you know, white friends, who reach out to me and say, you know, Michelle, as soon as I started talking about race on my social media, I'm losing followers daily. I'm like, yeah, that's going to happen, because you don't realize how many people in your life hold these values, and we have to challenge it.
And what I find so empowering about your message is that we should be acknowledging our privilege. And what makes it the negative connotation is when you see your privilege and don't do anything with your privilege.
Exactly.
It's like, that's, to me, that's so empowering. It's like, okay, yes, this exists.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I saw it on your account, that it was that the reference that racism is the water, not the shark. And it's like, okay,
Yes.
if that is the foundation from which the ethos that we're speaking through, then I think it's incredibly empowering to acknowledge privilege and use it.
Exactly.
Which is exactly what your platform does. So what would you say to someone who's, you know, 2 steps into the journey? They've picked up the book, they've read the podcast, and they've recognized that ally is a verb. What are ways that maybe people can like go a little deeper, or maybe a little wider with their activism?
Well, you know, the work never stops. It's interesting, because it's like, once you start, you just keep going and going and going. It's just a natural thing, and opens up more discovery about yourself. I think you start to learn more about yourself in this journey. To me, it's not even just about learning about racism, it's learning about yourself and expanding your world, which is beautiful. And again, I really think it's important to start recognizing those things in your everyday life. You know, so if you walk into your workplace, what's the demographic? Oh my God, there's a squirrel literally right at this window, and he's huge. I just got so distracted by that. I was like, oh my God. You know, look at the leadership in your organization. Wherever you go, you're gonna start to notice it. Just speak up. Just speak up. I love that right now influencers are challenging organizations to show us what their leadership team looks like, to show us their demographics of who are their employees. I saw a beauty brand recently that admitted they didn't have a Black employee for 12 years. 12 years. That's not unintentional. Like, at some point you have to, you know what I'm saying? So you have to start looking at where you are and challenging those things. And when I say challenge, I don't mean storm in somewhere and be like, where are all the Black people? Because that would be insane. But just ask the people around you, hey, you know, I noticed that we don't really have a diverse group of people here. You know, like, what can we do to improve that? You know, what diversity and inclusion measures are we doing within our company? You know, maybe we should bring in a speaker and start having these talks. And you'll see the response, and you'll notice whether or not people are open to that, or they're trying to uphold that supremacy. Someone just literally messaged me about that the other day. They said, when I brought it up, my employer was like, oh, we just don't think Black women are demographic, or, you know, in God's time, this and that. And it's like, nah, Black women, we like spending money. So you don't want us to be your demographic. Literally, that conversation
Put
happened.
that in the marketing deck. Oh my God.
Like, what? So, you know, like, I mean, like, even for me personally, sometimes I'll just email brands. I remember I emailed this brand called Brilliant Earth. I love their jewelry, but I was like, they're an ethical company. They ethically source their stones and their diamonds, which is great because there's a lot of terrible things that can happen in Africa with taking diamonds. And they donate a lot of their proceeds to these villages in Africa to support the women. And I said, that's great and all. And I said, but the only dark people, the only Black people that are on your site are the Africans that you're helping. And that is a very white savior mindset.
Yes.
Like, why wouldn't any of the models modeling the jewelry also be Black? That makes no sense to me. I said it in a much nicer way. And they immediately responded and they were like, oh my God, how did we not see that? We're going to alert our marketing team immediately. And they did make some changes, not like a whole lot. But again, it's like, you would think that if you are donating to African villages, you would have dark-skinned people. Like, I would love to buy your jewelry. I would love to buy your jewelry. But you're not valuing me as contributing to your organization. You're looking at me, someone like me who's African and dark-skinned, as someone to help. So you have to start challenging some of those things that are around you. And you can do that every day because there's so many examples of it.
Yeah. I mean, the shift from save to serve as a consumer, as someone who has dollars to give into your business. I mean, that shift is critical. I did receive questions from followers about, you know, influencing corporate culture, which you addressed in that example of just this. I guess folks get caught up in thinking it needs to be something that lives in a doc or in a brand, something fancy in a PowerPoint. It's like at the seat of the table, what do you say in the instance when you notice it? And I think in this work, at least I'll speak from personal experience, it's like once you start diving in, it's like seeing things through a very specific, you're like, oh, this Instagram filter, it's like you can't not see
Yeah.
it. So how would you say folks can then continue to do this work, but while still weighing mental health and the deep dive? Social media has been critical in this explosion, but there's also a cost to that, I think, from our energy expenditure.
There is. People, you got to be careful with social media because it's built to make you addicted. They know how to make you addicted. It's like, have you ever, like, you know, you close out your app and then literally 5 seconds later you reopen your app and you just out of there, you know? It will, like, it's a psychological tool. So you need to be really careful. I mean, set yourself reminder or those time limits. Stick to those time limits. Right now I'm wearing my sports bra because after this I'm gonna get some sun. I'm gonna go for a run. Make sure that you schedule in that time to do things that bring you joy as well for that balance, because this work is emotional. This week I've been feeling tired, just exhausted from the reading, and because like I said, the education never stops. So I'm always reading something new. I just literally finished listening to a book called Stamped, and the next day I picked up another book. You know, like for me personally, you know, like I ate a lot of fruit today. That makes me happy. I listen to music loud throughout the house. That makes me happy. I'm going to go get some more sun. That makes me happy. Make sure you are every single day doing something that brings you joy if you are also going to be on social media. You have to have a balance.
Especially in these conversations, which for some folks are new. I know for a lot of folks, this is lived experience and it's nothing new about it, but this engagement is like, as an athlete, I look at this is the ultra marathon. This is the ultra marathon. Like, we in it, right? Like, right. I know the athletes that are watching understand, and that in order to train hard, you have to then still fuel and nourish and sleep. Yeah. But what about folks who are uncomfortable even bringing this up to family and friends, knowing they have work to do, are willing to do the work, but then are on the precipice of bringing it into their circle and don't know how or feel paralyzed by that?
You cannot let the fear paralyze you, because if you do not bring this up to the people around you, that's a problem. You're still being part of the problem. Right. I feel like, though, to be honest with you, I feel like if you start on this journey, you are just naturally going to get so fired up, and the empathy will just naturally build as you start educating. I don't think it's going to be even possible for you to not bring it up. From what I understand from my white friends that are on this path, like my girlfriend Christina the other day, she was out somewhere, someone made a racist joke, and they were all white, and she was like, that was racist, and she said it just came out of her. Like, it just boop, came out of her mouth, that she challenged someone, and she goes, that was racist. Because when you start educating yourself, when you know better, you do better, I think, naturally. And yeah, fear is paralyzing, but can you imagine if you were scared? Like, would you get anything done? You would never do anything. And silence is what upholds white supremacy. Silence is what allows racism to continue. You know, people that end up murdering Black and brown people, they're not born racist. You're not born racist. That's not part of your makeup. But what happens is that you go unchallenged and unchecked for years and for years and for years, and no one challenges you. No one interrupts those moments to say, what you just said was racist. So every time you're saying something racist, it's reaffirming and confirming that what you're saying is true, and it builds and it escalates and it gets worse and it gets violent. That is why it is so important. I don't care if it's a joke. You say, would you say that if this person was here? You have to call it out every time you see it, because maybe eventually it'll start to seep into that person's brain. Hey, maybe all the people that have been telling me I'm racist, maybe there's something to that, and I should actually maybe look into that, right? So to me, at this point, at this stage, we are in a revolution. It is our generation's civil rights time. And for me personally, I'm no longer accepting that excuse that, oh, I'm scared to say something. We're past that. We're past that.
Agreed. And I think for folks who might be wondering, like, when you're at a loss for what to say, if you feel paralyzed and you don't want to call something racist, which I think with practice we all will get there, but ask the person saying the offensive thing, what do you mean by that? Because what do you mean by that? Because sometimes that gives enough pause, that pregnant pause in a conversation where it's like, wasn't funny. Beyond that,
right?
right. Let's start to check ourselves. And what? I think that you've stated this, but let's put a point on it. What is the role of white folks in the anti-racism fight?
When you're in white spaces, speak up. When you are spaces with Black and brown people, you listen. You listen, you learn, you take in. And then when you go back to your white spaces, you speak up, you challenge, you interrupt that racism, and you get people to be on the path with you. So you educate yourself, you speak up in your everyday life, and you amplify the voice of people of color. I want to know that if I'm not there, you're still going to stick up for me in your white groups, even when I'm not there.
Yes. Who you really are is what goes down when nobody's watching.
Exactly.
That's who your character really is.
Yep.
And so besides at Crib to Prague, which is your channel, what other folks of color organizations do you feel are must follows?
Layla Saad. Layla Saad is an absolute must follow. I'm not sure if CNN Radio has an actual Instagram page, but they should. Rachel Ricketts, she's amazing. Yeah, she's incredible. I was gonna say Matt McGrath, but he is not Black. Mark Lamont Hill is amazing. Angela Rye is amazing. Amanda Seales, she's a bit intense, but I love her. Amanda Seales is absolutely amazing. There's so many Black people. Actually, there are not too many of us doing this work, but there are a lot of us doing this work because it's tiring. Brittany Packnett, D-Ray McKesson, Opal Tometi. She is the woman that started Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Alicia Garza, another co-founder of Black Lives Matter. I mean, follow these accounts, follow these Black activists. We are doing this work for you every single day. We give you resources, we give you language, we give you accounts to follow, we give you action steps. So you don't need to be, always in our DMs and seeing like, what should I read? What should I do? It's like, we're out there doing this work for you every day. Melissa and I don't get paid unless we do a speaking engagement. That like we do this from straight fire and passion and just love for humanity. So we're giving you these resources. Come to our page and these other pages and take advantage of the labor that they're already doing for you on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. And then pay when you can. There are Patreons, there are workshops.
Yep.
I mean, if you have the ability, you should be paying people of color for the work that is valuable and necessary in this world. So, dang, Michelle, you are fire. I'm like, okay.
It's you know what? When I started this 2 years ago, I was like, what am I doing? Like we didn't know what we were doing, but it felt like, we had so much support and we had so many people pushing us forward, and that's what like keeps me going, also because I experienced this. I've, my boyfriend, my brothers, all the men in my family are Black, and so that's what keeps me going. But what really also keeps me going are so many messages of people whose eyes are being opened.
Yes.
We had 15,000 people maybe 3 weeks ago in our account. Now we have like 260,000 people. I mean, like, just a flood of people being like, it's time for me to do something. And I'm just so fired up by that. So anyone who is watching this, who's a recent follower, we love you. Thank you so much for your support. The revolution needs you. So keep up the energy, practice self-care, balance, mindfulness, and let's, build a new world together, build a new country together.
Yes, and people are listening, and it is an honor to have this conversation with you today. Are we going to jump on with Melissa also?
She's actually in Cali, so I'm going to just exit out, and then she's going to request back in.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll continue this conversation. I mean, I'm right here running alongside you in this ultra marathon for anti-racism, for a new world, and really thank you for the work that you've put in, because without folks like you willing to live the experience and then educate folks, I mean, that you are the connective tissue. So thank you.
Thank you too. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye. All right. So we're going to be waiting for Melissa, who works with Michelle at Priv to Prog, which is Privilege to Progress. Thank you all for all the questions that you submitted. I'm going to try to get to the remainder of the questions with Melissa. And I'm going to look for her asking to join in a moment. And thank you for bearing with me on the Wi-Fi gremlins. I don't know what that was about. Maybe it was an accidental. All right, here we go. Hi.
Oh, hi.
Welcome. I'm glad this worked out. I was like, okay, I got to re-add, I got to switcheroo. Here we go.
I wasn't sure I was going to work either, but it did. Thank you for having us. I was watching the whole time and I miss Michelle. She's home in my house in Philly because I'm out in California with my son.
Oh, okay.
So and then it's funny because I see behind her all my stuff that I haven't seen for months. I'm like, oh,
like, okay, my mug is still there.
yeah, and I appreciate it. She's there taking care of things. So.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, so let's continue the combo. I mean, gosh, Michelle already gave us so much to marinate on. But what about the folks who are white folks who are saying, it's not my problem. Like, how do we make them understand with empathy, compassion, or maybe some fire what the tea is?
Yeah, I mean, so like, if you don't mind, I'll go back a little bit. Is that,
sure.
Until that day in that Starbucks, I mean, I'm old. I'm way older than you guys. I'm 52 years old. And so it took me a long time to get to this path. So, it's not like I was completely ignorant or not aware of anything. I mean, you know, when I was in grad school, I was going to be a high school teacher. I'm not anymore, but at the time, and I knew I wanted to teach in Camden, New Jersey, which is across the bridge from Philadelphia, mostly Black and brown families that live in that area. And so I minored in African American studies. I literally minored in African American studies so I could prepare to teach English and know the literature and everything. But even that much education, essentially, I was still completely ignorant to my role. I was like, to be totally honest, like back in the day, and like I still keep in touch with some of my students who are friends now, like I was a total white savior. Absolutely. Like I didn't know what I was like. I meant well, I had good intentions, but I didn't know what I was doing because I hadn't really come to that place where I understood how my race was a really important part of my identity as an individual and within society. Yes. So as a white person in this work, in this movement, it's not my work to be able to understand what it feels like to be Black in America, because I never will. But it's my work to understand what it means to be white in America. So that's why the work is inward. And that's why we say the very first thing you have to do is learn. And so back to what do we say to those people? It's that it takes that moment, we call it an interruptive experience, where you finally see things where like the world turns upside down. Yes. And that was that moment for a lot of white people when they saw that video of George Floyd. And that's like the, you know, well, that's why they use the word woke. We don't usually use that word at all, but it was that moment of awakening where like literally it's like you wipe the clouds out of your eyes. You're like, holy shit, like what, like where am I living? So you see it and then you get like super gung-ho. You're like, oh my God. And you feel like, and you act like, unfortunately, that you like discovered racism, right? So I like to say to people is that you, it's new to you. Just remember, it's just new to you. It's not new. It's new to you. And and when you know, the newly awakened white person can get very eager to be in the conversation, and I know that because I went through that. I mean, I got after I tweeted that Starbucks video, a like every media outlet, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, like all over the world, and I was like deer in the headlights. I was like, this doesn't happen to white people. That's all I could say. Like, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I could contribute. And then I started like saying things and like, I'm sure I overstepped a million times. So what I'll say to anybody who is watching and on this path right now, who's white, is like, everything you're feeling is normal and expected and inevitable, because the psychological process you go through when you start to come to terms with your whiteness, it's like textbook. It's like the stages of grief almost. Like there's actually psychological, there's research out there on that. So you're gonna feel like, oh, I wanna say everything. But really, stop, know that this is normal, and just take it in. And exactly what Michelle said, learn everything you can. Try to keep from speaking up too much in that, I mean, we want you to speak up, but we only want you to speak up to say, I'm on the path, I'm learning, to get other people on the path with you. We want you to interrupt racism every time you see it. Yep. And we want you to speak up in your white spaces, like to your boss at work, or to your kids' teachers at school, or, you know, the different places right where you are. But really, most importantly, just continue to learn, because what'll happen is it'll take you time. You'll understand. I've been doing this for 2 years, like literally, like constantly. Like, I mean, I'm like 10 hours a day in racism stuff. And I'm just getting to a point where I'm really able to internalize what it means to be white and what my role is. So be patient, everyone. Stay with us.
Stay with it. Well, I mean,
long answer, Robin. Sorry, I tend to overtalk with my white ladies.
I love it. Honest, but that acknowledgement is so important because it's like we need you in the fight, and the fight is going to require us to get it's going to get sticky.
Sticky and long.
And for years, exactly, for years. Yeah, I was using the analogy, you know, with Michelle of the ultra marathon, because that it's when you start a race like that, when you start a race like running 100 miles, you're like, it doesn't even feel conceivable you'll get to the finish. So you have to start to admire the process.
Yeah.
So let's start to fall in love with this process of saying, I'm not centering myself as a white person or a non-black person of color. It's not, we're not centering ourselves in the conversation, and we just need to be able to sit in that discomfort enough to move the needle when we're not the centered part of the conversation.
Yeah, and to add to that, the thing is that, you know, a lot of people say, like, do the work. I mean, we use that phrase too, but like, I want everyone who's white, who's doing this work, or who's not black or not a person of color, who's doing this work right now, I want to just tell you about my experience in that it's not actually work. I hate to use that word because work sounds like, I mean, yes, it's hard because you're going to have a lot of feelings and it's going to be uncomfortable, but really what it is it's like anything. Like, if you have a part of your identity that you don't understand or embrace or really explore, then that part of your identity, it comes out in harmful ways to you and to everyone around you, right? I mean, this is what we like, look, I've been in therapy a long time, and that's the number one thing you learn. So you have to know yourself, and the work, what you're doing in this is that you're uncovering another part of yourself that has meaning, and it's going to make you feel freer, more comfortable in your skin, a better partner, a better parent, a better, you know, daughter or son, a better employee, everything. So yeah, while, you know, we're sitting here saying it's lifelong, you can't stop, you got to stick with it, it's going to benefit you as much as it benefits society. So that's the bottom line. I mean, you know, just because you're doing something that's good for society doesn't mean it's not good for you too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
the collective lift in the long term.
Yeah.
I mean, it's liberation in all the ways that we can speak to that. And what about, this is a great question that I want to make sure we don't miss. I'm a Black woman. How do I talk to my white friends about the BLM movement and encourage them to do the work and become anti-racist, especially those who seem unaffected? So how do we get folks to that, to wipe their glasses?
Well, that's hard for me to answer because I'm not a Black woman. So it's only really, you know, I can only really speak from a white perspective. So I will speak from the white perspective in that, I don't know. I think you have to do it in the way that reflects who you are as a human being, because any work you do, whether it's anti-racism work or any work you do in your life, when you bring your authentic self to it, then people respond to you in the most positive way. So I would say, you know, those white friends that you want to get on board with you, first of all, they're not really, I'm sure you know this, they're not really friends if they've never, you know, talked to you about this important part of your identity and how it matters to you. But if they are, you know, friends, or you want them to be closer friends and have a more intimate relationship with them in that way, then, you know, if you're willing to do the labor with them, if that relationship matters to you, absolutely open yourself up. Michelle does that all the time. I'm so appreciative of her. She, you know, in the beginning, she was, you know, she won't even say it, but man, she was like incredibly patient with me because, like I said, it takes a long time and you screw up. There were a lot of times where, and still, you know, part of it is personality. Part of it is definitely whiteness, that I tend to overtalk and I tend to take the stage a lot. And I know that it has a lot to do with all of those things about me, whiteness being part of my identity. And, you know, sooner or later I was like, oh, Michelle, I'm over talking, aren't I? And she'd be like, yep. And I'd be like, okay. So now, now I'm able to check myself better. But yeah, I just think, you know, somebody asked me that question the other day. A white person said, how do I talk to my Black friend about it? And I said, well, are they really a friend? Like, you're calling them friend, or are they your acquaintance? Because if you haven't had this kind of conversation with them prior, then I don't really know how close you are. I would venture to say that, you know, most white people who are having this question actually don't really have any Black friends of that level of relationship.
Yeah, that's real talk.
I didn't either. I talked about one of my former students. We're only 10 years apart in age because I was young when I was teaching. I was in my 20s, but she is one of my dearest friends for the last 20 years. And I'm like getting the chills saying this out loud if she's watching, is that I never talked to her about race. Not once. I never, you know, brought it up. I acted like I didn't see her color in a way. Like I was uncomfortable. I didn't want to offend her. I didn't want to say anything wrong. And it wasn't until after Starbucks where I sat down with her one day and I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I can't, you know, and our relationship has deepened so much. And yeah, I mean, just think about that with the people that are in your life.
Yes. Like, how are you willing to go deeper so we can all go higher? Dang.
Exactly.
And what about this is a question from one of my followers. For friends and family who don't understand, how can we help them realize and understand microaggressions are hurtful?
Yeah, so microaggressions, the way that I always explain that to white people, because I think that it's something they have more experience with, is that if you've ever been in an emotionally abusive relationship with a friend or a romantic partner, where you feel gaslit, where you feel like you don't know what end is up, where you don't trust yourself, where, you know, particularly like somebody who is narcissistic, that's the closest parallel that I can give to microaggressions. So like when someone would say to Michelle, like, oh, you're so articulate, she would go, wait a minute, what does that mean? Like it's can I curse on here? Do we curse on here?
Yes, honey.
Oh, it's the other term for it is mind fucking. Like it is like it questions your belief in yourself. And that's what a microaggression does. It makes you think that what you believe isn't even real. And truthfully, if I have to say, I think like white America in the broad swath is fucking emotionally abusing Black America in the big picture and in the little picture every day. And I'm not saying it's intentional. Some of it is, but I say the mass of it is probably unconscious or subconscious. But you need to understand that what you're doing is it's crazy making. It's making people crazy and not trust themselves.
Like it sounds to me like with that analogy, it's in any relationship that makes you feel like you're having to endure 10,000 paper cuts, which
100%,
which are painful. So we're looking at systemic, big, you know, racism is the water, and then we're looking at the ways that these little 10,000 paper cuts should not need to be endured by offhand comments or whatever it is. How the ways that folks are feeling that.
And I'll tell Michelle, like she'll call me, you know, we talk all the time, but she'll say, oh, my friend said she was really upset about a post that I put up, like because she thought it might be about her. And I said, like, Michelle, like, that's an assault on you. That's a that right there is a microaggression. It's like she's taking something that that is about your feelings and something that's hurt you and making it about her feelings. So if you're, I can't imagine what that feels like, but you're absolutely right. It probably feels like you are being assaulted from all sides all the time. And I don't know how you move through the world like that without constantly feeling abused. That's the best. Like it's abuse. It's emotional abuse. It's physical abuse, as we see in the things that happen in real life. But America abuses its Black citizens, and from the very beginning, you know, in the big picture, in the systems, and in individual behaviors.
Yeah. And it's going to require reflection, education, reflection, and action. So what do you say for the folks who aren't people of color watching? What is additive to the process of reflection, which then enables more action? So what about, can you speak on the reflection piece? Like, what are ways or processes in which people can do that work?
Yeah, I think honestly, the first thing is that once you start learning, you're going to start having more conversations. And like anything, is that we know that, I'm going to go back to the therapy thing, is that when there's something inside of you, one of the best ways to sort of loosen it up and to make any sort of like pain in it dissipate is to release it, is to talk about it. So as you're learning and as you're having these feelings, you know, you should be talking about it with someone. I'm not saying, it depends who that is. Maybe it's the other white people in your life. If you do have someone that you have an intimate relationship as a friend of yours who's Black, that is willing to and able to talk about that with you, then there's that. But I feel like when you're going through that process, to sort of come to terms with all of it, you can't just do it internally. There's got to be conversation, which is exactly what we're trying to do at P2P. That conversation we started on April 12th, 2018. It was like this, and right. So we're not letting that conversation die. We've been keeping it alive.
Yes.
Now it's much
keep foot on the gas,
but we're not going to stop ever. So those conversations, those one-to-ones and those group conversations, they need to happen, because that's the thing that makes it real. That takes it from concept to actual action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for holding space for this conversation. It's been an honor to speak with Michelle and yourself today. Where can folks continue this conversation on your channel? Where is that happening?
Thank you for saying that. Okay, so we have a beautiful community of, I don't even know. I have to sort of like look at the numbers, because things have been crazy good with people paying attention. But, you know, on our Instagram, it's, you know, 260,000, our Facebook, our Twitter, all of those things. Join our community, because our community of people, we're called From Privilege to Progress, using their privilege for progress, not making their privilege, you know, making them feel guilty or ashamed or defensive, but actually using it in a positive way. So you join our community by following us on social media. We learn together every single day. We post resources that you can learn from. We talk about them. And then Michelle and I do all kinds, I know she mentioned we do all kinds of speaking engagements at corporations, organizations, events. We have a big summit planned for April of 2021, our Show Up Summit, where we can come together as a community. And we hope that is the first annual of all our summits. So we're a community. We learn together. We learn how to speak up in our everyday lives right where we are. And we amplify Black voices and the voices of people of color, so that we can desegregate that conversation. Because I'm sure Michelle mentioned your network, if you're white at least, is 91% white. And we need to desegregate that conversation to keep the conversation going and not in the two silos. So join us. The other thing I want to say is we have, and it's selling out so fast, we have an anti-racism learning event that we are.
Great. When is that?
It's Tuesday. The discussion is this coming Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. You go to our page, you go to the link in bio, you'll see it there.
So it's at Crib to Prague.
Just
so folks know. Okay.
Yeah. We partner with, we spent lots of time looking for the absolute best partner to provide trainings to our community. And this company, Point Made Learning, they are just like amazing, run by a man named Andre Robert Lee, who is a filmmaker, and his anti-racism trainings, what we do, it's not like, it's so experiential. In fact, what they do is they take their trainings to schools and corporations and things like that. And my son, when he was in high school, they came to his school, and he will say, he's like, how is 19 now? 20, he's almost 20. He will say that is the moment where he really understood what his role was when he participated in that training. It's great. So what you do is when you sign up, you get access to watch the film, the documentary film that Andre and his partner Catherine made. And it's a 90-minute film. You watch it on your own, and then you join in our group discussion on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be so good.
Okay, great. So folks are going to go to @Crib to Prague, go to your Instagram, sign up at the link in bio, and then we're going to watch the 90-minute film and then gather on next Tuesday at 8 p.m. for the conversation. Right?
That's right. Thank you. And we'll be offering, that's just one of the trainings. That's the beginning of us offering trainings that we feel are like the most impactful ones. So that's just the beginning. We're excited.
Let's do this. We are in this. It's an honor to have y'all on my feed today, and we're going to continue this conversation. I would love to have you both again. And I look forward to engaging with you on these platforms and on these issues, because we can't look away. Once you see, if it's not your lived experience, keep looking harder, because unfortunately we're going to keep looking until there are no examples to look for of racism.
Exactly. We appreciate you so much. It's so important, and that you're using your platform to spread this word, and it really makes all the difference. So we're so happy you had us on.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thanks for everybody for tuning in. Keep the combo going in the comments. Much love to you. Be well, everybody.